Hey everyone, we're alive. Let me just do a quick sanity check to make sure my audio is sounding not terrible. Man, I wish that I could get that audio sounding that good when I'm over at the layout. I'm gonna have to do some searching to see what I can do about that. Maybe get a wireless lav mic or something. Okay. Today, I don't know how close I can get this to the camera with the focus being what it is. Okay, I guess we do this. I don't know if you can tell here. I've got a little texture that I've applied to the various parts that are going to represent sort of the concrete bridge pilings and supports and stuff like that. The material I applied was, let me grab it. Maybe if I can find it. Here it is. Fiber paste by Golden. This was a technique that I picked up from Boomer Dinoramas. He was using it on his bridge piers. So I'm using it on mine as well. Goes on kind of like almost like a white glue. It's got a bit of a texture, like a fibrous texture to it. Yeah. So I just put it on, kind of stabbed around a little bit, played with some water just to see what that would do to the texture. It's pretty forgiving. It dries fairly quickly. But the texture that I have on it now, I think is a little too out of scale in most places. So what I want to do is I just want to sand it down a little bit and just to get it a little more scale as far as the texture that's on the actual plastic itself. So that's what a lot today is going to be. It's just going to be me sanding. So we'll just go ahead and do some sanding. And then once I get done with that, once I get done with that, I'm probably going to apply another final layer of primer just to bring the color all uniform so it's not splotchy. And that way, once I actually start to paint it with the final color, I've got a nice uniform sort of base that I'm working on for the paint. So not a lot of fancy stuff to look at in today's stream. Just a lot of sanding. Sometimes the hobby is just about a lot of sanding. If I had $1 for every time I sanded something over the years, man. Basically, every hobby I have requires like an ungodly amount of sanding, it seems. Except for Lego. If you're sanding your Lego, you've done something wrong. This texture looks nice though overall. I mean, this is just my effort, my attempt to like kind of just keep my models from looking just straight out of the box, just like paint by numbers, if you will. just try to hide the origins of it a little bit more. I mean, so many models these days are all just well, there's cornerstone sets, which is fine. They're great sets. But you've seen one, you kind of seen them all at this point, you know what I mean? And especially when you're doing like bridges and overpasses and piers and all sorts of things like that, you kind of want it to blend into the scenery a little bit more than just a regular building. So taking the extra time to kind of build out extra abutments like this, and or what are they, abutments? I don't know what they're called. Retaining walls, I guess. It certainly helps sort of set it into the scene and make it feel like your own kind of thing. And I also added styrene on top of it to cover up the sort of the grid pattern that was molded into the original sort of top of the deck. Give it a little bit more of a modern highway overpass look. That was super easy to do. And just kind of hid the origins of this kit a little bit better too. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell, but it's starting to get a little more, the rough texture's still there, but it's getting a little more scale looking as far as the depth of that texture off of the surface. Which is what I was looking to do. But I like how it's looking. It'll be interesting to see when I paint it up what its final result is going to be. Its final form, but I plan on using this in other areas of the layout as well. Using this technique with the fiber paste. I'm going to take a little, I'll do that. Take a little knife blade to the edge of some of these bigger chunky areas. Just trying to get up some of that more caked on stuff in the corners. a little hard to tell right now just what this texture is looking like, only because of how ununiform the color is. So anything that's white is texture. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly how much that stands up off the plastic. You know, is it too much? Is it just the right amount? I think it's going to really take one last coat of primer to bring the color into the same sort of uniform pattern before I can really tell, hey, is this doing what I want it to or not? I think it is, though. I think it's looking pretty good. Does a really good job of covering up the seams on like these rounded posts too. Okay, we're gonna come over here. We're gonna do the same thing over here. This should be a little bit easier just because it's a flat surface. There's not a whole lot of nooks and crannies to worry about. I also didn't pile it on as thick on these as I did on the bridge abutment. Or whatever these piers are here. These things. I don't know terms. So let's see. I'll save that from last. Let's go ahead and come over here and finish this up. It's a pretty awkward model to work on just because it's so large and kind of gangly. I got a spot where it's a little loose. I want to fix that further. Oop. Gotta be careful, I'm messing this up a little bit. Let's take a razor to the. Mm-hmm. Trying to be gentle. Let me put back on what I was listening to before. Just lots of sanding. Trying to be very gentle with these retaining walls because their attachment points are pretty delicate. Hey, Casey. Good morning to you as well. It is an early morning stream. Well, not early morning. It's like 8 o'clock, right? It's an earlier morning stream. How about that? Russ asks if I do this process with every building or is it different for different types? This is different. This is actually first time I'm doing this. This is just what I'm doing is I'm texturing smooth plastic to make it look like rough concrete that's been there for a while, and the rain's kind of pitted it. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to take an unnatural material, plastic, and make it look natural, make it look like concrete, right? So there are instances where you wouldn't necessarily do this, like the top here, right? The pavement at the top is going to be pretty smooth. So I won't be applying this technique to the top of it. The sides of it, the sides of it are steel, so those are going to be smooth. I won't be applying that technique to the sides of it. But for any building that needs this kind of technique attached to it, yes, I will be doing this for those buildings. I'm trying to overall with this model railroad take the time to take those extra steps to do it right, to do it as good as it can be. And because I'm building a smaller model railroad, I have the time to do that. I want to do a video about this soon, but I want to talk about how smaller is better when it comes to model railroads. And better is a subjective term, right? Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me see if I can get this camera in a better spot. Got it on a sorry. I've got it on a swing arm here, and so I can kind of move around a little bit. So yeah, smaller is better, but better is a subjective term. Like, what is better? And in my mind, better is just being able to devote more time to a particular scene or a particular subject so that it is more accurate or realistic or interesting is probably the best term to use. When I bought this house, I had a room that was about twice the size of the one the model railroad is in now. I ended up putting a wall down the center of the room and cutting it in half, taking half for myself, and my wife took the other half for her stuff. But originally she offered to let me just have the whole thing, and I considered it quite a bit. But with twice the space, it takes twice the time to do this same level of work across the entire model railroad, right? Because you have to fill twice the space. Also, it takes twice the money. So with half the space, you get a lot of benefits. It takes half the money for sure. But it doesn't necessarily have to take half the time. Well, let me back that up. It would take half the time of a large space to get it to the same level, right? But let's say you put 1,000 hours into a large model railroad. I'm just throwing these numbers out there. Within those 1,000 hours, you only have so much time to make models and scenery and lay track and ballast and all that stuff, right? So you're going to parse that out over those 1,000 hours and arrive at a level of good enough before you have to move on to the next thing, right? If you work 1,000 hours on a smaller layout, those hours go into fewer and fewer things. And so therefore those fewer and fewer things have an opportunity to be better and better because of it. And then you get to the end of the 1,000 hours and you're like, hey, I got some more time. I can go back here and rework the scene, or I can add more detail over here, or maybe I can then choose to expand. So you have a lot more options because you get to the end of that 1,000 hours and you're like, I'm pretty close to being done. How else can I improve this? Whereas on a large layout, you get to the end of $1,000 and you're like, I could put twice as much work into these things. So you get more options with a smaller layout. There are some downsides to the smaller layout. It becomes more difficult to run long trains or a lot of trains. If you like having large operating sessions with tons of people over working trains on your layout, small layout could be probably not very conducive to that kind of thing. So to each their own, for sure. Some people don't like modeling. Some people like just operations and prefer the larger layouts because of that, and that's fine. There's no right way to model railroad. But I do think some ways make more sense than others. Okay. I'm going to call this good as far as the sanding. Russ says, smaller. I've seen it and it seems huge. You know what? I go back and forth on the size of my layout because it seems big to me too. But everything I've done before now has been so small. That in comparison, it seems big, but then I see other people's layouts and it's really not. I mean, it's a decent sized room, but I'm not filling the room. I've got a large section in the middle that I'm not filling up with track. I've got 5 industries, and none of them have like a ton of track work, right? Okay, I think this is quote unquote done. I could certainly spend a lot of time sanding and all sorts of things on this, but what I'm going to do, actually what I want to do before I totally forget about it, is fix this loose piece right here. And then once I do that, we're going to set it aside and I'm going to prime it one last time, and then we'll do final paint and weather on it. And that'll be for another day. But I got another project still to do today that I'll go ahead and do with you guys here. Okay, there's that other loose piece right over there. I certainly understand that, like, for a lot of people, my layout would seem huge because they just don't have the same space I do. So I recognize that I'm pretty lucky with the amount of space I'm able to dedicate to my layout, that's for sure. Okay, and once that dries, that should look pretty good too. Cool. Yep, I think this is pretty good. For a first attempt at this concrete texture, I think that this looks pretty good. And any mistakes I've made in areas where it's a little too rough or whatever, I will be weathering this down a little bit more, so it should help kind of hide those mistakes. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna get another building. We're gonna do a little more painting. Okay. You might remember this one from a couple streams ago. It was blue back then. Now it's brown. Well, we're going to do a little bit of painting today. We do a third and final layer of brown on this. And then I have this medium gray that I'm using as my cement color. Ooh, you can't really tell because of the lighting what color that is. Let's try this. It's kind of a cement color. That'll go on to this bottom part here. And then I have rubber black, which will be for these sort of baffles here. I still haven't decided what color to paint these doors. If I'm going to keep them gray, if I'm going to give them like a silver or a white finish. I haven't decided. It'll be something. But yeah. So this will be just a chill painting session. These Tamiya paints I just bought. A friend insisted that if I was going to be doing any more weathering, that I start using Tamiya paints instead of Vallejo. And so I promised I would. I do like the Vallejo quite a bit, though. So it'll be interesting to see how the Tamiya compares. Russ, if you think my layout's huge, we should take you to some of my friends' layouts. Okay. Oh, I need water. Where's the water? Do I have a bottle of water laying around? I do. Actually, let me get rid of this. I just bought these clear plastic shot glasses that are disposable for just such an occasion. One thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make the process of modeling as easy as possible on myself, which will encourage me to do more of it more often. And sorry about the lighting here, guys. one of the things that keeps me from wanting to model is the cleanup process, the setup and teardown process, both. So I'm using these disposable cups for water and paint cleaning and all sorts of things like that. So that when I'm done modeling, I can just throw away the cup. I don't need to worry about like cleaning it out. If I can get away with not cleaning, I will. So I'm using this Model Air paint from Vallejo, which is a paint that's formulated specifically just to be put straight into the airbrush without any sort of dilution or anything like that. So great for airbrushing to get stuff going quick, but bad if you're brush painting because it goes on so thin. This is the third time I'm making a pass at these at this wall to try to get the paint thick enough. Now, the good thing about being so thin is it's going to go on smooth as silk. So you're not going to have like paint strokes to worry about because it goes on so thin, there's no paint strokes. One thing I hate when painting is seeing the paint strokes. That was always a problem for me in the past because I wasn't thinning my paints down enough. So this solves that problem, but you are doing twice the work. Having to go over on multiple layers just to get it thick enough. So I did 2 previously. This is the 3rd layer. I think 3rd layer will be just fine. I'm going to do a little weathering on top of it, so. Hey, Chad, thank you for the compliment on the flat. Yeah, it's going to be, I think, pretty cool when it's done. I'm going to add drain pipes and roof details, and I want to actually have like cabling, like power cabling running along the outside of it. I've seen some prototype photos, some wires kind of like just hanging down on the sides of it and stuff in various places. I think that'd be kind of cool. So we'll see. But I want to add a lot of little details to this for sure. Like this right here, I want to board this up with maybe some plywood or something, as if it was a door that they used at one point, but then decided against it. Maybe I won't use plywood to board up. Maybe I'll just kind of represent it as being not used. These 2 doors used, this one not. But I like the extra little bit of character that that gives to this piece. So yeah. Everything in this layout is going to be about telling a little story about about each little scene. That's where the details come. I'm going to switch over to a different paint palette because that paint is so thin. I need a little cup to hold the paint. It's gonna be interesting. I don't want to add so much detail that's going to be unrealistic, but I do want to add more than your average amount of detail. So I don't want to do like a Franklin and South Manchester style layout where it's a hyper level of detail that's like very stylized. Not to talk down what what he did with the Franklin South Manchester layout, because I think it's an absolutely gorgeous layout. But everything in that layout, all the details in there are there for a reason, right? He considered what could he put here and what would be the best option. And I want to do the same. I want to take a look at every scene in my layout and figure out what details can I put here, and does it make sense to add that detail, or is it just too much? And I like to lean towards adding the detail whenever possible, but knowing that like I don't want to go too far with it. Does that make sense? I think a good example of what I'm kind of hoping for in the end is what Boomer Dioramas has, where he's just got a hyper level of detail everywhere, but it looks and feels like a real place. Doesn't feel like a cartoon version of a real place. It just feels like it's a place you can go and visit. Oh, gosh. Man, there's got to be a better way to handle the lighting here. I may end up having to get a different camera one day that can kind of handle, because I have a lot of light on my bench work and it's kind of in an awkward spot. Okay. I think that is pretty good as far as the brown paint goes. I mean, just got a little more paint on the palette, so I'm going to go ahead and use it up. Yeah, Chad, the fine detail I think is where it's at for model roads, especially since like with the rail car the model rail cars and locomotives that you can get these days are so nicely detailed. I mean, detailed to perfection. I mean, there's really not a lot more that can be added to these cars at this point. I mean, you can make some of the details like a finer scale in appearance, but then you start running into issues of stuff breaking in transport, right? But those cars and locomotives, they're so nicely detailed at this point that I think a lot of the model building kits are kind of lagging pretty far behind. Like this is a Walthers Cornerstones kit, and if it was at the level of detail that like a locomotive would be, it would come with all those extra details like the um, down pipes for water, roof details, the wire for electrical boxes, and electrical conduit and trash that you can pile around the buildings and stuff. Like it would have all that kind of extra stuff, but they don't. Some of the Craftsman kits do, but most modern building kits don't have that kind of thing. All right, I think I'm going to start in with the cement texture along the bottom here next. Well, I'm going back and forth. Do I want to do the black rubber gaskets or do I want to do the cement texture? Let's do the black rubber gaskets because if I screw that up and I get it on the cement texture, I can always touch it up before going back and beginning the cement texture bit. So I've got this Tamiya XF85. Can you see it? Rubber Black is the name. I didn't want to buy pure black because nothing in nature is really pure black. Or, nothing in the environment is ever really pure black. So this looks like a black that's kind of been faded by the sun. So it's going to look a little more natural because of it. All right, and this you thin with alcohol. Which I just happen to have a bottle of right here. Chad is going to light many of his buildings so he can also do night op sessions. Me too. I will be lighting my layout as well. That'll be the last, I think, step really on the layout for me is going to be the lighting. But I want to light up building interiors, so it means detailing building interiors, lamp posts, all that kind of stuff. All right. Cool. What size brush should I be using? Let's go with this brush right here. This is pretty thin already. I've never used Tamiya paint, so I don't know if they require thinning or not. If your hand brushing them. I don't know if they require thinning. The only thing with night op session, Chad, I don't know that I'm going to do is I don't know how I'm going to do room lighting yet for a night op session. Haven't decided on that. I could probably do LEDs in the ceiling and just kind of keep it low. One thing I want to avoid is the blue look. I don't know that blue necessarily looks very good for night ops. All right, I'm going to. It's a little trick I learned. You put a little bit of paint on your glove and you can kind of see. Can you see the brush strokes? And yeah, I can see the brush strokes slightly. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to it. Do it again. Goes on a little wetter this way, but there are no brush strokes. And that's how you know the paint is the right consistency. It's a cool tip. I learned it from wargaming painters. And we need a lot more paint than this. Sorry that the lighting is so bad on the camera. I don't really know what to do about it. I'm gonna need a lot more paint than what I put on the palette. Let's see if I can pour it, but not make it a huge mess. I have a feeling if I try to pour it, I'm gonna make a huge mess. Okay. I made a bit of a mess. Where are we at time-wise? Almost an hour. I like to keep these about an hour. I'm going to let this one go a little bit longer today. Just because the first half of it was so boring with just watching me sand. Okay. Another awkwardly sized building structure. Yeah, I think I'm gonna need my glasses. It's amazing having a pair of reading glasses is helping me this much. It's scary. I'm getting old. I think I may end up painting the roof in the same black. I had originally thought I was going to use maybe sandpaper to kind of give it that, what do you call it, whatever that rough roof look is, but I think that this might look good as a tar paper roof too. All right. Trying to be very careful because that black, you want to get that black on any of the finished paint. Chad says he doesn't know what he's going to use for room lighting either. I think the blue is a fine idea. I just think you have to keep it kind of subtle. I tend to look at like railroad photography and the night scenes that you see on the railroad photography. They're not blue. Blue is a kind of stage trick to sort of like simulate moonlight, but moonlight's not blue. And it just kind of became like shorthand for blue light means night, right? It just kind of became what it was after a while. And so we just sort of grew up thinking blue light means nighttime. We never really question it. It's not really. I mean, it's cooler. It's a cooler color than the warm yellow sun, right? That's kind of the idea behind it. Because what you're getting at night is indirect light. So anyway, I don't know. I think maybe mixing a little bit of blue in with some just really soft, dim lighting that's just enough to kind of light the path so you're not tripping over yourself in the room, and then letting all the layout lighting do the rest of the work. I think might be the best way to go. I think what you want to do is let the layout lighting feel like it is lighting the room versus the other way around, but still provide enough light in the room so you don't feel like you're in the dark stumbling around, if that makes sense. I don't know. John Parker's got a nighttime on his layout, and it seems pretty good. I'd have to see it in person, I think, to get a full idea of what I feel about it. But I don't know if this is in focus for you guys or not. I actually really like how these colors are going on. These, to me, colors are no joke. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for now. Let's see if I need anything else. Or if that's enough paint, which I think it probably is enough paint. We'll see. Again, trying to avoid brush strokes. Whenever possible. All right, I'm gonna let that dry and see where that gets me. But so far, so good. Russ says a lot of industries use white roofs to deflect heat, especially if they're running machines that are already run hot. That's a good idea. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to go to one of the buildings that I am looking to replicate on Google Maps and see what they do for their roofs. I'm gonna do that. We'll see how they handle it. We'll replicate that. Cool. All right. I'm going to call it good here for today, guys. We're running a little over an hour now, which is about where I want these videos to be. But thank you again for everyone for stopping by and saying hi and hanging out with me while I do a little sanding, a little bit of painting, and making a little more progress on my model railroad. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you all in another video.